The courtroom was silent, but the silence was heavy. Every chair was full, and people whispered to each other nervously. Cameras from the news stations clicked and flashed as reporters tried to capture every angle of the tense scene. At the front, the judge sat behind a tall, wooden bench, looking stern. His eyes scanned the papers in front of him, and every now and then he glanced at the defendant, her father, who sat nervously, hands trembling on his lap. He had been accused of a crime that shocked the entire town. Everyone believed he was guilty. Everyone, that is, except his daughter. The door at the back of the courtroom creaked open. All eyes slowly turned. A young black girl, only 17 or 18 years old, stepped inside. She walked with confidence, though her heart raced. Her eyes were sharp, alert, and full of determination. People whispered, "Who is she? Is she related to him? Does she know something?" The air in the courtroom grew heavier, as if everyone was holding their breath. She didn't wait for anyone to call her name. She went straight to the judge's bench. Her voice was calm but strong. "Your Honor, my dad is innocent," she said. The courtroom went completely silent. A few gasps echoed through the room. The judge froze, adjusting his glasses, staring at her as if he had not expected such boldness from a teenager. Lawyers froze, and even the court reporter paused mid-word. The girl stood tall, clutching a small folder in her hands. "I know this is hard to believe," she continued, "but I have proof that will show my father did not do what he is accused of." Some people in the courtroom chuckled softly, thinking a child could not possibly understand the seriousness of the case. But the girl's eyes were unwavering, and her voice carried a weight no one could ignore. The judge finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Young lady, you may have your say, but you must follow the court rules. Sit down and present your evidence through your lawyer." She shook her head. "No, Your Honor. I need to speak directly. I need everyone here to hear what I have found." She glanced at the gallery full of people, neighbors, reporters, and strangers. Every pair of eyes was fixed on her. The tension in the room grew. Some people leaned forward in their seats, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. Her father looked at her, a mix of fear and hope in his eyes. He had seen her courage before, but this was different. This was a courtroom. Lives could be changed in moments like this. He swallowed hard and whispered, "Be careful, baby girl." She nodded slightly and turned back to the judge. "I promise, Your Honor, I will be careful, but I cannot let my father be punished for a crime he did not commit. Not when I know the truth." The prosecutor, a tall man with a sharp suit and sharper words, leaned back in his chair. His lips curled into a smirk. "And what, exactly, do you know, little girl?" he asked, his tone dripping with disbelief. "This is serious business. Court is not a place for children's stories." The girl's eyes narrowed. "It's not a story. It's the truth. And it's in my hands now. If you refuse to listen, innocent blood will be on your hands too." Her words sent shivers down the spines of everyone in the courtroom. The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued, and even the prosecutor hesitated, unsure how to respond. The girl took a deep breath and opened the folder slightly, enough for people to see papers and photographs inside. She didn't show everything yet, just enough to create curiosity. "These documents, they will change everything. The evidence everyone trusted, it's wrong. It points to someone else. Someone who wanted to hurt my dad." Murmurs filled the room. People exchanged confused looks. Some gasped. How could a teenager know so much about a complex case? How could she even find these documents? The courtroom, usually orderly and serious, felt like it was on the edge of chaos. The judge leaned forward. "Where did you get these documents?" His voice was calm, but the courtroom could feel the tension in every word. The girl looked directly at him, her gaze steady. "I found them, Your Honor. I followed clues that no one else noticed. I worked quietly, studying everything, and I discovered the truth. If you let me, I will show you everything." The judge paused. He knew that sometimes truth comes from unexpected places. He also knew that the father's life was at stake. Slowly, he nodded. "Very well. You may proceed. But remember, every word you speak here must be accurate. The court will hold you responsible." The girl nodded once, firmly. She turned to the courtroom, her hands slightly trembling but her voice unwavering. Everyone here thinks they know the story, but you don't. And soon, you will see the truth that no one expected. The courtroom held its breath. Every eye was on her. Even the news cameras seemed to lean closer, as if trying to capture her courage and the suspense building in the air. In that moment, everyone realized something. This was not just another courtroom drama. Something extraordinary was about to unfold, and it all started with a brave young girl, a folder of evidence, and a powerful declaration. My dad is innocent. The judge tapped his gavel lightly, the sound echoing in the silent room. Very well. Let us begin. And just like that, the story that would shock the entire town, confuse the prosecutor, and challenge every assumption in the courtroom had officially begun. The courtroom was still buzzing with whispers. Everyone's eyes were glued to the young girl, who now stood near her father. Her small frame held an unusual confidence, as if she carried the weight of truth itself. No one had expected a teenager to challenge the system, but here she was, ready to reveal secrets that could shake the entire courtroom. She took a deep breath and opened the folder wider. Your Honor, she said, her voice calm but firm, I need everyone to pay attention. What I found is not in the files the police gave you. It was hidden. It was meant to stay hidden. The judge leaned forward, intrigued. Hidden? Explain what you mean. She glanced at her father, whose eyes showed a mix of hope and fear. Then she addressed the room. My dad has been accused of something terrible. Everyone believes he did it. But I followed small clues, things no one noticed. And I discovered evidence that proves he didn't commit the crime. The prosecutor, a man with sharp eyes and a louder voice, scoffed. And what, pray tell, does a teenage girl know about legal evidence? This courtroom deals with facts, not your imagination. The girl's gaze didn't waver. She held up a piece of paper. This is a phone message my dad received months ago. No one looked at it carefully. It shows that someone else was planning this crime, someone close to us. The police missed it because they assumed it wasn't important. Murmurs ran through the courtroom. Some people leaned forward, curious. The judge raised an eyebrow. Continue, he said. She opened another page from the folder. These are receipts and bank statements. My dad was accused of paying someone to commit this crime. But look closely. The numbers don't match his account. Someone used his information to make it look like he was guilty. The prosecutor frowned, clearly annoyed. He tried to interrupt. Objection. This is irrelevant. Where did you get these documents? They could be forged. The girl cut him off calmly. No, they are real. I double-checked everything. I compared his phone records, his bank statements, and the messages. Everything points to someone trying to frame him. And I know who. A hush fell over the courtroom. People couldn't believe what they were hearing. A teenage girl had just accused someone who had not yet been named, of committing a crime that the whole town thought her father did. Her father's hands trembled slightly. Baby, are you sure? He whispered. I'm sure, Dad, she replied softly, but with determination. I've followed every clue. I've checked every detail. No one else noticed, but I did. I won't let you take the blame for something you didn't do. The judge adjusted his glasses. Miss, what is your name? Jade Thompson, Your Honor, she said. Miss Thompson, presenting evidence in court is serious. Do you understand the consequences if you are wrong? Yes, Your Honor. But I'm not wrong, she said firmly. The truth is here, and I need you to see it. She flipped through a few more papers, revealing photographs. They were taken secretly by her. They showed the real culprit at locations connected to the crime, someone everyone trusted. She didn't reveal the person's name yet, but the images were enough to make the courtroom tense. Your Honor, these photographs show someone moving around suspiciously on the day of the crime, she said. If you compare them with the timeline the prosecution presented, you'll see my dad couldn't have done this. Someone wanted to make it look like he did. The gallery was silent. Some people exchanged nervous glances. The prosecutor looked pale, unsure how to respond. The courtroom, usually orderly, felt like it was on the edge of chaos. Every person could sense the young girl's determination, and the evidence she presented was impossible to ignore. She paused, letting the tension build. Then she spoke again, her voice soft but full of authority. I know this sounds unbelievable, Everyone thinks my dad is guilty. But sometimes, the truth hides in details people overlook. I followed every detail, every clue, and I discovered who really planned this crime. If you look at the messages, the receipts, and the photographs together, it all points to one person. And that person is still free today, while my dad suffers in court. The judge tapped his pen on the desk slowly. Miss Thompson, this is remarkable. Your attention to detail is impressive. But the court must verify every claim. How did you get these materials? Jade looked straight at him. I looked quietly, Your Honor. I checked every record, followed every clue. I did not tell anyone until I was sure. I needed proof before I spoke. The prosecutor muttered something under his breath, clearly frustrated. The gallery remained silent, holding their breath. Everyone could feel the tension growing. The room had transformed from a simple courtroom hearing into a stage where a young girl was challenging the law itself, demanding that everyone pay attention to something they had missed. Jade closed the folder slightly and looked around. Your Honor, the person who did this wanted my father to be blamed. They are clever, but I was smarter. I followed every trace, every step. If you look carefully at this evidence, you will see the truth. My dad did not do this. He is innocent. A few reporters leaned forward, cameras ready. The courtroom was silent again, waiting for the judge's reaction. The suspense was unbearable. Every second felt longer than the last. The judge finally nodded slowly. Very well, Miss Thompson. Present the full evidence. The court will examine it carefully. Jade nodded. A small smile appeared on her face, but her eyes remained sharp and focused. The hidden truth was about to come to light, and no one could have imagined the storm that was about to hit the courtroom. Everyone waited, leaning forward in their seats. The young girl had only begun, and already she had everyone questioning everything they thought they knew. The real story was just starting, and Jade was about to reveal it piece by piece. The courtroom was quieter than it had ever been. Every eye was fixed on Jade Thompson, the young girl who had dared to challenge the system. Her father sat tensely in his chair, hands gripping the edges. Even the prosecutor, once confident and smug, now shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. Something had changed. Something significant. Jade took a deep breath and opened her folder fully this time. Your Honor, she said, her voice steady and clear, I am ready to show the evidence that will prove my father's innocence. Not just words, not just claims, but proof that no one else has seen until now. The judge leaned forward, curiosity and caution in his eyes. Very well, Miss Thompson. Present the evidence carefully. Jay began with a set of photographs. They were not just ordinary pictures. They were taken secretly, capturing details that no one in the courtroom had considered. One photo showed a man leaving a building at an unusual hour. Another showed him receiving a suspicious package. Yet another showed him near a location where the crime had occurred, but at a time that proved the father could not have been involved. This man, she said, pointing to one of the images, is the person who planned the crime. He wanted to make it look like my father did it, but he left traces, small mistakes. I noticed them, and I followed them. The courtroom was silent. Even the prosecutor's lips were pressed tightly together. Murmurs broke out among the spectators. People leaned forward, trying to catch every detail. The evidence was undeniable, yet the story behind it was hard to believe. How could a teenager gather something so complex? Jade carefully pulled out another set of papers. These are bank statements, Your Honor. My father's accounts were tampered with. Look closely at the transactions. See how someone withdrew money that he never authorized? That was meant to make him look guilty. But I compared dates, times, and amounts. It all points to the real criminal. She paused for effect, letting her words sink in. I know the prosecution believes these records are clear evidence against my father. But I checked every detail. The police overlooked it. The statements show a trail that leads directly to the person who set him up. The judge leaned back slightly, clearly impressed. Miss Thompson, this is very thorough. But can we verify these documents? Jade nodded. Yes, Your Honor. I have copies verified by the bank. They match the original statements. And I also have CCTV footage that proves the movements of the real criminal on the day of the crime. She reached in her folder and pulled out a small USB drive. Holding it up, she said, "This contains the footage. No one has seen it yet. When you watch it, you will see that my father could not have committed the crime. He was somewhere else entirely. The man in these photos, that is the person responsible." Gasps filled the courtroom. The prosecutor's confident demeanor faltered. "Objection," he said quickly. "How can a teenager bring such critical evidence? This is highly irregular." Jade's voice remained calm. "I collected it carefully, sir. I did not tamper with anything. I only follow the facts. The footage will confirm everything I am saying." Her father's eyes filled with hope. He leaned closer to her and whispered, "Jade, how did you do all this?" "I watched, I listened, and I paid attention to what everyone missed, Dad," she said softly. "I never gave up. I had to find the truth." The judge looked at the prosecutor, then back at Jade. "Bring the footage forward. Let the court see it immediately." Technicians hurried to set up the screens. Cameras from a news channel zoomed in, capturing the moment. Everyone waited in tense silence. The first frame appeared on the screen, a busy street, timestamp flashing. A man moved cautiously, checking around him, carrying something hidden under his coat. The footage continued, showing him entering a building linked to the crime, then leaving in a hurry, clearly in a rush to cover his tracks. The courtroom gasped. The spectators whispered and pointed. Even the prosecutor's face went pale. The man in the footage matched the photographs and the bank records Jade had presented. The pattern was undeniable. Jade's eyes did not leave the screen. "Your Honor, see for yourself. This is the person who tried to frame my father. Every step, every action, it matches the evidence I found. My father was not there. He could not have done this. The truth is clear." Some witnesses muttered among themselves, shocked that they had trusted the wrong story for so long. The tension in the courtroom grew, electric and suffocating. Every second felt like an eternity. The room, once orderly and controlled, now buzzed with the chaos of revelation. The judge raised a hand for silence. This is very compelling. Miss Thompson, you may have uncovered evidence that no one else in this case noticed. The court will examine it thoroughly, but you must explain how you found these items." Jade nodded, standing tall. "I noticed small things no one else did. A message here, a transaction there, a pattern that seemed strange. I followed the trail quietly, carefully. I verified every detail. I never stopped until I had proof. And now, Your Honor, the truth is here." The judge tapped his gavel lightly. "Very well. The court acknowledges receipt of this evidence. The real question now is, how will the prosecution respond?" The prosecutor looked trapped, fumbling with his papers. The courtroom, once full of assumptions and disbelief, now had a single focus: the truth that Jade had uncovered. One young girl, armed with determination and careful observation, had changed the course of the case entirely. And the tension, the suspense, and the mystery of what would happen next were far from over. The courtroom had seen the first proof, but the revelation of the full story and the identity of the person behind the crime was still waiting to shock everyone completely. The courtroom had quieted down, but the tension was far from over. Jade Thompson had presented secret evidence, photographs, bank statements, and CCTV footage. Everyone in the room was beginning to question what they had believed for weeks. But before the full truth could unfold, Jade knew one thing. To save her father, she had to show not just the evidence, but the story behind the man they thought was guilty. She looked at her father, sitting nervously in his chair. His hands were clasped tightly together, and for the first time, she noticed the weight of exhaustion in his eyes. He had been carrying this burden for months, ever since the accusation turned his world upside down. Jade took a deep breath and began. "Your Honor," she said softly, "before I reveal the rest of the evidence, I want everyone here to understand who my father really is. Because if you know him like I do, you will understand why he could never have done what he is accused of." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead, Miss Thompson. Proceed." Jade opened a small notebook she had brought, flipping to a page filled with carefully written notes. "My father, David Thompson, has always been a good man. He is not perfect, but he is kind, honest, and fair. He has worked tirelessly in our community helping people quietly without asking for praise. He has never hurt anyone, not physically or emotionally, and he certainly could not commit the crime he is accused of. The gallery was silent. Some people whispered among themselves. Many had only known David Thompson through news reports, which painted him as a criminal. But Jade's words began to cast a different light, a human light, filled with memories, love, and integrity. She continued, "I remember when I was little, Dad would take me to the park every weekend. He taught me to ride my bike, to speak up when I see injustice, and to always be brave. He helped my neighbors fix their homes when they couldn't afford it. He spent nights helping at the local shelter. None of this makes the news, but tells you who he truly is." Her father's eyes glistened as he listened. A small, proud smile appeared on his face, but he remained tense. Every word Jade spoke carried weight in that courtroom, and every person listening could feel the emotion in her voice. "Months ago," Jade said, lowering her voice slightly, "someone began plotting against my father. I don't know why yet, but they wanted him to look guilty. They were clever, hiding evidence, creating false trails, and making everyone believe my dad was guilty. But I noticed things that didn't make sense." She flipped the page to show a few scribbles. "These are notes I kept while following the clues. I observed my father's routines. I watched how people interacted around him. And slowly, I began to see patterns. Clues that the police missed. Evidence that pointed to the real culprit, not my dad." The judge leaned forward, intrigued. "Miss Thompson, this is unusual, but your observations seem precise. Continue." Jade nodded. "I also want everyone to know the kind of father he is. He never raised his voice in anger. He never hurt me or anyone else. Even when we were facing financial difficulties, he worked harder instead of blaming anyone. He is the kind of man who sacrifices for others. He could never plan a crime that would hurt innocent people." Some members of the gallery wiped tears from their eyes. The courtroom, tense and serious, was now filled with emotion. The human story of David Thompson was unfolding, layer by layer, under the careful guidance of his brave daughter. Jade took a deep breath and continued, "Your Honor, the person who framed him thought they could destroy a good man's life. They counted on everyone believing the worst. But I know the truth. I have seen my father's actions, his kindness, his honesty. And I have followed the hidden clues that will prove he did not commit the crime." She reached into her folder again. "This is why the evidence I found matters. It is not just about papers or photos. It is about truth, justice, and exposing the lies that tried to ruin my father's life. He is innocent, and the real criminal is still out there. I will show you who it is." The judge leaned back, clearly impressed by her courage and determination. He looked around the courtroom. "Miss Thompson, your father's character, as presented by you, is compelling. But we must rely on facts and evidence. I understand that his story is important, but we will need the proof you have promised." Jade nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. The proof is coming. But it is important that everyone here knows the kind of man my father is. Only then will the evidence make sense." Her father's hands trembled slightly as he whispered, "Jade, thank you. You are braver than I ever imagined." She smiled softly. "I'm only doing what is right, Dad. I will not let them destroy you." The courtroom remained silent, absorbing every word. For the first time, people began to question their assumptions. The man accused of a terrible crime was not a stranger, not a villain. They were starting to see him through the eyes of a loving daughter who knew the truth. And as Jade carefully put the notebook down and prepared to reveal the next piece of evidence, the tension in the room grew once more. The human story had set the stage, but the legal battle, the real exposure of the hidden criminal, was about to begin. The audience, both inside the courtroom and watching through cameras, leaned forward. The father's backstory had revealed his humanity. Now, everyone was eager, waiting for Jade to reveal the final secrets that would shock the entire court. The story was far from over. In fact, it was just reaching the moment where truth, courage, and justice would collide in ways no one could have imagined. The courtroom was tense. Every eye was glued to Jade Thompson. Her evidence had already shaken the room. Her father's innocence was now a question that no one could ignore. The judge, the lawyers, and the crowd waited silently. The air was heavy with anticipation. Everyone knew that the next word from Jade could change everything. Jade took a deep breath. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind countless times, but she knew the real challenge was keeping her composure. Her small hands held the folder tightly. "Your Honor," she said, her voice calm yet firm, "I am now ready to reveal the person who framed my father." A wave of murmurs ran through the courtroom. People leaned forward, some shocked, some curious, some skeptical. The prosecutor straightened in his chair, his confidence shaken. He had assumed the girl's evidence was clever, but not conclusive. Now, it seemed he was facing a storm he could not control. Jade opened the folder and pulled out a photograph. She held it up for everyone to see. The man in the picture was someone everyone trusted, someone no one would suspect. A hush fell over the courtroom. Even the judge looked surprised. "This," she said, pointing at the man, "is the person who planned the crime. He is the one who made it look like my father was guilty. He used my father's information to hide his own actions. He thought no one would notice. But I did." The gallery gasped. Some people whispered, "No way, he couldn't have, I know him. I never thought he would do something like this." The courtroom was in disbelief. A trusted figure, a man of respect, was accused of being the real criminal. The prosecutor stood up quickly. "Objection. Miss Thompson, this is highly irregular. How can a teenager accuse someone in court without proper verification? This is hearsay." Jade's eyes didn't leave the photograph. "Sir, this is not hearsay. I have proof. Everything matches. Phone records, bank transactions, CCTV footage." He tried to cover his tracks, but he made small mistakes, and I followed them. The judge leaned forward. "Miss Thompson, present the proof. This court must see it before any conclusions are drawn." Jade nodded and reached for a second folder. "Your Honor, I have documents, messages, and video clips that show this man planning the crime. He even communicated with people trying to create false trails, all to frame my father. If you examine the evidence carefully, it will be clear that my father was innocent the whole time." The prosecutor tried to interrupt again, but the judge raised a hand. "Quiet. Let the girl present her case." Jade took a deep breath and connected the dots out loud. "Look at this message here. It was sent the night before the crime. It shows instructions to manipulate accounts and create fake evidence. Then, look at this bank transaction. My father's account was used without his knowledge. And here," she said, pulling out a video clip, "is the CCTV footage of him moving near the crime scene, while my father was far away, verified by another camera." The courtroom went silent again, the tension thick like a storm about to break. People leaned closer. The judge examined the papers carefully. The prosecutor's face turned pale. He whispered under his breath, This is bad." Jade's voice grew stronger. "Your Honor, this man thought he could destroy my father's life. He used every trick he knew, but I followed the clues. I noticed the inconsistencies. I checked every detail. I am the only one who saw the truth hidden behind the lies." A few spectators whispered excitedly. Some even stood up, unable to contain their shock. "She's right. He was too clever, but he made mistakes." Jade turned to the judge, her eyes steady. "Judge, I'm asking you to examine the evidence carefully. The person in these documents is the one who deserves to be held accountable, not my father. The truth has been hidden for months, but now it is in plain sight." The judge leaned back, processing every word. "This is unprecedented, but the evidence seems substantial. The court will need to verify it carefully before any action is taken." Jade nodded, but she could sense the moment had changed everything. The courtroom was no longer focused on her father's guilt. It was now about the shocking revelation of the real criminal. People exchanged worried glances, realizing that a trusted figure in their community had been planning a crime right under their noses. Her father exhaled slowly, a weight lifting off his shoulders. "Jade, you found the truth. I don't know how to thank you," he whispered, tears welling in his eyes. Jade smiled faintly. "I just had to, Dad. I couldn't let them ruin your life. I knew the truth, and I had to show it. They might not believe me at first, but the evidence will speak for itself. The prosecutor finally spoke, his voice strained. Your Honor, if what she says is true, this changes everything. The evidence must be verified immediately. The judge nodded. Court will review the materials. But it is clear that Miss Thompson has presented a serious claim. The court will not ignore it. Jade carefully placed the folder on the table, her hands steady despite the adrenaline. She had done what no one expected. A young girl had turned the entire courtroom upside down, exposing a twist that no one saw coming. And as the courtroom buzzed with whispers, speculation, and shock, Jade knew the next steps would be even more intense. The hidden truth had begun to reveal itself, and the real criminal would soon face the consequences. The unexpected twist had shattered assumptions, silenced doubters, and turned the tide in her father's favor. But the drama was far from over. The courtroom was waiting for the final confrontation, the moment when justice would finally be clear. The courtroom was a storm waiting to erupt. Jade Thompson had just revealed the shocking twist. The person everyone trusted was the real criminal, and her father had been framed. The room was tense, heavy with disbelief and curiosity. Reporters jostled for a better view. Spectators whispered, some in shock, others in disbelief. The prosecutor, usually commanding the courtroom, now looked unsteady, scrambling through papers as if searching for a way to save face. Jade stood tall, her eyes focused and determined. She had expected skepticism, even doubt, but the reaction in the room was more intense than she had imagined. People were not just questioning her father's innocence. They were now questioning everything they had believed about the case. The judge raised his gavel, attempting to restore order. Quiet in the court. His voice rang out, but only partially subdued the murmur of the crowd. He looked at Jade. Miss Thompson, please present the evidence clearly. The court must verify every claim before we proceed. Jade nodded. She carefully laid out photographs, documents, bank statements, and a USB containing CCTV footage on the table. Your Honor, she said, her voice calm but unwavering. All of this evidence shows that my father did not commit the crime. Every detail points to the real criminal. I have checked everything twice. Nothing is missing, nothing is fake. The truth is in these files, and the footage confirms it all. The prosecutor finally spoke, though his voice trembled. Objection. Even if she presents this, how can a teenager be responsible for gathering evidence like this? It is highly irregular and possibly inadmissible. Jade's gaze didn't falter. Sir, the evidence is real. Every transaction, every message, every photograph is authentic. The footage was verified by security cameras, and the bank records match official documents. My father's innocence can be proven beyond doubt. The gallery grew louder. People whispered, murmured, and pointed at the photographs. Some had faces of shock. Others leaned forward, anticipating the revelation that could save an innocent man. Even the judge's stern expression softened slightly, acknowledging that the evidence could not be ignored. Suddenly, a lawyer in the back of the room, representing a witness, stood up, interrupting the court. Your Honor, the prosecution overlooked this because they assumed it was irrelevant. These documents show a clear timeline of the events, contradicting the initial claims. How could this have been missed? The prosecutor's face turned red. That's impossible. This evidence changes nothing. Jade calmly replied, it changes everything. My father's innocence, the real criminal's guilt, the truth that no one saw. All of it is here. Tension mounted as the judge tapped his gavel lightly, signaling for silence. He leaned forward, his voice serious. We will verify this evidence immediately. Courtroom staff, check the documents and the footage. The court will not make any premature judgments, but it is clear that these claims are serious and must be investigated. The room erupted in murmurs again. Reporters whispered excitedly, cameras clicking. Spectators couldn't sit still, some standing to get a better view of the evidence spread across the table. Everyone was on edge, knowing that the case could turn completely upside down at any moment. Then, the court technicians started setting up the CCTV footage on the big screen. The entire courtroom leaned in, as the first frames appeared. The footage showed a man moving carefully, checking to see if anyone was watching, carrying a bag that matched what had been reported at the crime scene. Every movement was deliberate, calculated, yet clumsy in small ways that Jade had noticed before. The judge's eyes widened. The prosecutor's confident expression crumbled completely. Spectators whispered, "It's him. It's really him." Jade's voice rang out. "Your Honor, see the way he moves. Notice how he leaves the building and checks behind him constantly. This is someone who knew what he was doing, but he tried to cover every step. The timeline matches my father's alibi perfectly. He was nowhere near the crime scene. The evidence proves it." Suddenly, the accused, her father's real enemy, sat in the back row, trying to maintain a calm face. He realized the trap had tightened. The photographs, bank statements, and CCTV were closing in on him. He whispered nervously to his lawyer, but his words barely reached the audience. Everyone's attention was on the unfolding drama. The prosecutor, desperate to regain control, stood. "Your Honor, this is unprecedented. We cannot rely on evidence gathered by a teenager. There must be verification. This court cannot proceed like this." Jade took a step forward. Verification is simple. Compare the documents, the timestamps, the messages, the bank records with official records. Every detail matches. You can see the truth for yourself. My father did not commit this crime. The courtroom erupted into chaos. People whispered loudly, some gasping, some pointing at the man trying to frame David Thompson. Spectators leaned over. Reporters shouted into their microphones. Lawyers argued with each other, and the judge banged his gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. "Quiet, quiet," the judge shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We will verify the evidence. Everyone, remain calm." But calm was impossible. The courtroom was alive with tension, energy, and suspense. Every person present felt the weight of the revelation. A young girl had exposed the real criminal, and now the truth was unstoppable. Jade turned to her father, who was still seated but now staring at the chaos with wide eyes. "Dad," she whispered, "just watch. The truth will come out, and everyone will see you are innocent." Her father exhaled slowly, relief and fear mixing in his chest. "Jade, you're incredible," he said quietly. "I never imagined. I couldn't have done this without you." The judge looked at Jade with a mixture of awe and caution. "Miss Thompson, your evidence is compelling. The court will verify everything immediately. But for now, it is clear that this case has taken an unexpected turn. The chaos in this courtroom is only the beginning of uncovering the truth." And as the cameras continued to roll, the whispers grew louder, and the room held its collective breath. The courtroom chaos had reached its peak, but the final confrontation, the moment when justice would finally reveal itself, was still waiting to unfold. The courtroom had never felt so tense. Every person present was holding their breath. Cameras from news outlets were flashing continuously, reporters whispering hurriedly, scribbling every word. Spectators leaned forward, barely blinking. The trial that had once seemed like a clear case against David Thompson was now a storm of suspense, evidence, and shocking revelations. And in the middle of it all stood Jade Thompson, the young girl whose courage and determination had shaken the entire courtroom. The judge tapped his gavel lightly, signaling the start of the final session. "We will now proceed to review the evidence presented by Miss Thompson," he announced, his voice calm but authoritative. "All claims will be verified, and the court will then deliver a verdict based on facts alone." Jade looked at her father. His face was pale but hopeful. He had spent months under the weight of an accusation that threatened to ruin his life. Now, everything rested on the truth she had uncovered. He reached out and held her hand, squeezing it gently. "Jade, thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Jade nodded, her eyes steady. "We will see the truth, Dad. Just watch." Technicians played the CCTV footage again on a large screen. The court watched closely as the man who had framed David moved cautiously, hiding evidence, attempting to manipulate accounts, and orchestrating every detail of the crime. Each frame confirmed what Jade had said. The real criminal had planned meticulously, but tiny mistakes had given away the truth. The judge leaned forward, scrutinizing each document, photograph, and transaction. "The evidence seems consistent with the claims made by Miss Thompson," he said aloud. "The bank records, the messages, and the footage all point to the same conclusion. David Thompson could not have committed this crime. The person responsible is the individual identified by the evidence." Murmurs spread throughout the courtroom. Some spectators whispered in disbelief. He did it all this time? Others looked shocked at the idea that they had misjudged a man they thought they knew. The prosecutor's face was pale. He had tried to discredit the evidence, but now it was undeniable. Even his attempts to object fell flat under the weight of Jade's meticulous investigation. He finally nodded silently, realizing the truth was impossible to ignore. Jade took a step forward, addressing the court. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. My father is innocent. Every action, every transaction, every photograph points to the real criminal. He has been framed, and justice must be served." The judge nodded slowly. "The court has reviewed all evidence and verified its authenticity. It is now clear that David Thompson did not commit the crime he was accused of. The court finds him not guilty." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Relief and joy mixed with shock and disbelief. Some people applauded quietly, while others sat frozen, trying to process what had just happened. David Thompson sank back into his chair, tears streaming down his face. After months of fear and uncertainty, he was finally free. Jade rushed forward and hugged her father tightly. "It's over, Dad. You're safe now," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. David held her close, feeling the weight of the months lift from his shoulders. "You saved my life, Jade. I don't know how to thank you," he said softly, his voice filled with gratitude and love. The judge looked at Jade with admiration. "Miss Thompson, your courage, intelligence, and determination have brought the truth to light. You have acted bravely and responsibly, and your efforts have ensured justice is served. The court commends you for your actions." Jade blushed slightly, humbled by the praise. "Thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted the truth to be known," she replied. The real criminal, who had tried to frame David, was now being escorted out of the courtroom in handcuffs. Shock and disbelief marked his face. He had believed he could escape justice, but the careful observation and relentless pursuit of truth by a teenage girl had undone every plan. Spectators whispered and photographed the scene, capturing the moment when justice prevailed. Reporters shouted questions, trying to get Jade's comment, but she shook her head gently, smiling softly. "The truth speaks for itself," she said simply. David looked at his daughter with pride and awe. "You were incredible, Jade. I don't think I've ever seen such courage," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You risked everything to prove the truth." Jade smiled faintly. "I only did what I had to do, Dad. You didn't deserve this. No one does. I couldn't let them ruin your life." As the courtroom slowly emptied, the atmosphere shifted from tension to relief. Justice had been restored, not by wealth, influence, or fear, but by courage, determination, and careful attention to detail. Jade had reminded everyone that even in a world filled with deception, the truth could prevail when someone refused to give up. Outside the courtroom, reporters continued to gather, cameras flashing, capturing every moment. Spectators praised Jade and David, admiring the bravery that had turned a nightmare into a story of triumph. Jade looked at her father one last time. "Let's go home, Dad," she said softly. He nodded, a smile spreading across his face. Finally, they were free. Finally, justice had been served. And as they walked out together, hand in hand, the story of courage, truth, and determination reached its conclusion. A young girl's bravery had saved a man she loved, exposed a criminal, and reminded everyone that sometimes the smallest voices can make the biggest difference. The courtroom would remember this case for years to come. But for Jade and her father, it was more than a story. It was their life, their struggle, and their victory. And it all began with a simple declaration that changed everything. "My dad is innocent."